What if the moment a police officer hands you back your license, you already have the legal power to walk away, and most people never use it? Right now, somewhere in this country, a driver is sitting in their car, scared, confused, giving away rights they don't even know they have. Before we go further, if you want to actually understand your rights instead of guessing at them, hit subscribe right now. Not later, not after the video, right now. Because the next traffic stop you face could be tonight and you need this in your head before that happens, not after. Let's set the scene. You're driving home. Maybe it's late. Maybe your tail light is out or you rolled through a stop sign a little too fast. Lights flash behind you. Red and blue. Your stomach drops. You pull over. The officer walks up. Maybe they're polite. Maybe they're stern. They ask for your license and registration. You hand it over because that part you have to do. Then something strange happens. They don't leave right away. They linger. They ask where you're coming from, where you're headed, whether you've had anything to drink, whether there's anything in the car they should know about. And here's the part nobody tells you. Once that officer has already decided what to do with you, whether it's a ticket, a warning, or nothing at all, the legal reason for that stop is finished. Done. Over. But most drivers don't know that. So they keep answering questions. They keep sitting there. They let the stop stretch on for 5, 10, sometimes 20 extra minutes, all because they didn't know there was a way out. There is a way out. 2 words, just 2 words said the right way at the right time that force the officer to either let you go immediately or come up with a real legal reason to keep you there. Not a vague feeling, not a hunch, an actual specific legal justification they have to be able to explain later, under oath if necessary. Those 2 words are, am I? As in, am I free to leave? Sounds simple, right? It is simple. But here's the catch. Almost everyone who tries to use this phrase gets it wrong. They say it at the wrong time, they say it with the wrong tone, they say it once and then give up. And when you get it wrong, instead of protecting you, it can actually make things worse. This case isn't just internet legal advice floating around, it comes from a real Supreme Court ruling, Rodriguez versus United States. In that case, the court made it clear that a traffic stop can only last as long as it takes to handle the actual reason for the stop. Checking your license, running your plates, writing the ticket. Once that's done, the officer needs a brand new reason, separate and specific, to keep holding you there. Without that new reason, you're free to go. That's the law. That's your right. But knowing the law and knowing how to use it in real life under pressure with a flashlight in your face are 2 very different things. So let's break down exactly how this works, the mistakes that ruin it, and how to do it the right way, step by step. First, let's talk about what you should be doing in the very first moments of the stop, before you even think about asking if you're free to leave. When you see those lights, pull over calmly and safely. Don't slam the brakes, don't swerve. Find a safe spot, signal, and pull over smoothly. Keep your engine running. This matters more than people think. Turning your engine off can be read as a small gesture of full surrender, like you're settling in for a long conversation. You don't want that signal. You want to look ready to continue your drive the moment you're allowed to. If it's dark, turn on your interior light. This isn't about being extra polite, it's about safety for you and for the officer, and it removes any reason for the officer to feel nervous or suspicious about what they can't see inside your car. Keep both hands visible. The steering wheel is the easiest, most natural place. Roll your window down just enough to pass documents through. 3 or 4 inches is plenty. You don't need it fully open. When the officer approaches and asks for your documents, hand them over without hesitation. If you need to reach for your wallet or glove box, say what you're doing before you do it. Something like, "My license is in my back pocket, I'm reaching for it now." This isn't about being scared. It's about being smart. It removes any confusion about your movements and keeps the interaction calm and predictable. Beyond that, here's the golden rule. Hand over your documents and say nothing else. No small talk, no explaining where you're headed, no nervous rambling to fill the silence. Officers are trained to listen for those little extra details, the things you offer up without being asked. Those details can become the building blocks of suspicion, even when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. Now here's where most people lose control of the situation, and it happens in 5 very specific ways. The first mistake is asking the question too soon. Picture this. You got pulled over for something small, a broken tail light, a rolling stop. The officer takes your license back to their car. You're sitting there, nervous, watching the minutes tick by. 5 minutes, 7 minutes. your patience runs out, and the second you see the officer walking back towards your car, you blurt out, "Am I free to leave?" The officer looks at you and says, "I haven't even given you your paperwork yet." And legally, they're right. Remember what we talked about with Rodriguez versus United States? The stop is still active until its purpose is complete. That means until the officer has finished checking your information and either gives you a ticket, a warning, or simply hands your documents back, the stop hasn't ended yet. Asking too early doesn't end it for you. All it does is make you look anxious. And on body camera footage, anxious to leave can be twisted into acting nervous, which some officers may read as a red flag, fairly or not. The right move is patience. Sit calmly, keep your hands visible. Wait until your documents are physically back in your hands. That moment, when your license and registration are returned to you, is your green light. That's when the original purpose of the stop is truly finished, and that's when asking the question carries its full legal weight. This brings us to the second mistake, and it's one that even people who know about this tactic still mess up. The second mistake is asking only once and accepting a vague non-answer. Let's say you do everything right. You wait. The officer hands back your documents along with a warning. You calmly ask, "Am I free to leave?" And the officer says something like, "And just hang on a second." That's not a yes. It's not a no either. It's a gray area, and officers know exactly how to use it. That kind of response keeps you sitting there without ever technically saying you're being detained. If you just nod and wait quietly, that extra time starts to look voluntary, like you chose to stay even though you didn't. The Supreme Court case that matters here is United States versus Mendenhall. That case set the standard for figuring out whether someone has actually been detained. The test is this: would a reasonable person in that exact situation believe they were free to walk away? If the answer is no, then legally you've been seized, even if no one ever said the words, "You're under arrest." So if you get a vague answer like "hang tight" or "give me a second," don't just sit there in silence. Ask again, calmly and clearly. "I want to be respectful, but I need a clear answer. Am I free to leave, or am I being detained?" If you still don't get a straight answer, ask one more time. This isn't about being difficult. It's about creating a clear recorded moment where you tried to leave and were stopped from doing so without explanation. That moment, captured on camera, becomes powerful evidence later if anything about that stop is ever challenged in court. If you want to keep learning how to protect yourself in moments like this, drop a comment right now telling me which mistake on this list surprises you the most. I read through these and it helps me know exactly what to cover next. Now let's talk about the third mistake, and this one trips up even people who think they're handling things correctly. The third mistake is staying silent instead of actually saying out loud that you're using your right to remain silent. Here's the situation. You ask if you're free to leave. This time, the officer doesn't dance around it. They say, "You know you're being detained." Most people's instinct at that point is to just go quiet. They figure silence is safe. They figure not talking automatically protects them. It doesn't, not on its own. There's a Supreme Court case called Salinas versus Texas that changed how this works. The ruling says that simply staying quiet isn't the same as formally invoking your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. If you want that protection to actually apply, you have to say it out loud, clearly. If you don't, prosecutors can later point to your silence and use it against you in certain situations, especially if you answer even one question later in the conversation. So the moment an officer tells you that you are being detained and not free to leave, that's your cue. You need to say something like, "I understand. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches. I want an attorney present for any further questioning." Say it calmly. Say it clearly. Keep your hands visible the entire time. This matters even more if the officer follows up with something that sounds casual and harmless like, "Just tell me where you're headed and we'll wrap this up." That question feels small. It feels like nothing. But if you haven't formally invoked your rights, your answer to that question is fair game, and it goes straight into the record. There's one more layer here depending on where you live. Some states are what's called stop and identify states, places like Texas, Nevada, and Colorado. In those states, if you're lawfully detained, you may be legally required to give your name, and sometimes your date of birth. If that applies to you, give your name if asked, but immediately follow it with your invocation of rights. In states like California and New York, Those identification requirements generally only apply once you're actually under arrest, not during a simple stop. It's worth knowing your specific state's rules ahead of time because this is exactly the kind of detail that matters most under pressure when you have the least time to think. No matter what state you're in, the order matters. Name if it's required by law. Then immediately, you're in vacation. Fifth Amendment. No consent to searches. Request for an attorney said out loud on camera, in that order. Now let's move to the fourth mistake, and this is the one that catches even people who've done everything right up to this point. The fourth mistake is missing it when an officer evades your question with a new question of their own. This one is sneaky because in the moment, it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like a normal conversation. Here's how it plays out. You've asked clearly, "Am I free to leave?" Instead of a yes or no, the officer pivots. They might say something like, "I just want to ask you a couple more questions. That okay? You got somewhere to be?" And almost on instinct, people respond. They answer the new question instead of pushing for an answer to their original one. That pivot is not an accident, it's a technique. Officers are trained to know that once the official purpose of a stop is finished, if they can keep you talking voluntarily, anything you say from that point forward can be used. As long as the conversation looks casual and consensual on camera, it counts as voluntary, even if you never agreed to keep talking in the first place. There's a Supreme Court case here too, Berkmer versus McCarty. It established that routine roadside questioning during a traffic stop generally isn't treated as a formal interrogation requiring Miranda warnings, which means whatever you say casually on the side of the road can absolutely be used later, even if no one ever read you your rights. So if an officer deflects your question with a new one, don't follow them down that path. Don't explain yourself. Don't get defensive. Just calmly redirect. Something like, "I've already invoked my right to remain silent. I don't have any further answers to give. Am I free to leave or am I being detained?" Stay polite. Stay firm. Repeat it as many times as you need to without ever answering their new question. This is honestly the most important mistake to understand because it doesn't feel like a mistake while it's happening. It feels like you're just being a normal cooperative person. That's exactly why it works so well against people who don't see it coming. Now, the fifth and final mistake, and this one can quietly undo everything else you've done right. The fifth mistake is asking the question with the wrong tone. Here's the truth that nobody likes to hear. This phrase, "Am I free to leave?" works. But it only works for you if you say it in a way that doesn't give the officer a reason to describe your behavior as aggressive, confrontational, or threatening. After watching countless examples of how these stops actually play out, the pattern is incredibly consistent. When someone asks this question calmly, without attitude, without sarcasm, officers who don't have a legitimate reason to extend the stop almost always let that person go. But when someone asks the exact same question with frustration in their voice, or with a raised tone, or with obvious sarcasm, something shifts. Suddenly, the officer's report describes the driver as agitated, uncooperative, or acting erratically. And that kind of language can open the door to exactly the kind of extended stop you were trying to avoid in the first place. You will not win anything by arguing on the side of the road. That's simply not where these situations get resolved. They get resolved later in front of a judge, with calm, clear body camera footage showing a person who respectfully and clearly exercised their rights. Every sharp word, every sarcastic comment you make in that moment becomes ammunition for someone else to use against you later. So when you ask, keep it simple, keep it steady. Something like, "Officer, I appreciate your time. I've received my warning and I want to be respectful. Am I free to leave now?" If they stall, stay just as calm. "I need to be clear. Am I free to leave or am I being detained? I'm asking respectfully." Every word measured, every word calm. On camera, you become the obviously reasonable person in the interaction. Not a threat, not someone causing problems, just a citizen calmly using a right that belongs to them. If this is starting to click for you, share this with someone you care about right now, a parent, a sibling, a friend who drives every single day. This isn't the kind of information you want them learning for the first time during an actual traffic stop. Let's bring all 5 of these together, because once you see the full picture, it becomes incredibly clear how this is supposed to work. Mistake 1 is asking too early before the stop's actual purpose is finished. The fix is patience. Wait until your documents are physically back in your hands. That's your true starting point. Mistake 2 is asking only once and accepting a vague, non-committal answer. The fix is persistence. Ask again, and if needed, ask a third time. Each calm, clear request builds a stronger record. Mistake 3 is staying silent instead of actually saying out loud that you're invoking your rights. The fix is to speak up the moment you're told you're being detained. Say the words. Fifth Amendment, no consent to searches. Request for an attorney. Out loud, clearly, on camera. Mistake 4 is falling for an officer's deflection when they answer your question with a question of their own. The fix is to never take that bait. Redirect every single time, calmly, back to your original question. Mistake 5 is tone. The fix is staying calm no matter what. Measured, polite, steady, every single time, no matter how frustrated you feel inside. Here are the exact phrases worth remembering from everything we just covered. Am I free to leave? I need a clear answer. Am I free to leave, or am I being detained? And if you're detained, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches. I want an attorney present for any questioning. Say these out loud a few times right now. Practice them until they feel natural, because the truth is, in a real moment like this, your heart will be racing, your hands might be shaking, and the only thing standing between you and giving away your rights is whether these words come out smoothly or not at all. This isn't about disrespecting police officers. Most officers are simply doing their job, and showing them respect costs you nothing. This is about understanding that you have rights that exist for a reason, rights that have been tested and upheld in courtrooms across this country, and those rights only protect you if you actually know how to use them. Knowledge like this isn't meant to sit in your head doing nothing. It's meant to be used the moment you actually need it, in a stressful, high-pressure situation where you won't have time to look anything up. That's exactly why repetition matters. That's why saying these phrases out loud now, before you ever need them, makes such a massive difference later. One more thing before we wrap up. None of this replaces real legal advice from a licensed attorney in your specific state. Laws shift slightly from place to place, and if you ever find yourself in a serious situation, a real conversation with a lawyer who knows your local laws is always worth having. Think of everything in this video as your foundation, the starting point that helps you stay calm, stay informed, and stay in control during one of the most stressful situations a regular person can face. If this video gave you something you didn't know before today, that's exactly why it exists. Hit like so it reaches someone else before their next drive. Subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up, because there's another legal standard, one most drivers have never even heard of, that applies in very specific situations, and it could matter just as much as everything we covered today. You now know the 2 words. You know the 5 ways people get them wrong. The next time those lights appear behind you, you won't be the person who freezes up and gives everything away without realizing it. You'll be the person who stays calm, stays respectful, and stays completely in control of the situation. That control was always your right. Now you actually know how to use it.